Settle down, Quentin Quarantino.
No, you go for it, Chef.
Good morning. Hope everyone's safe and staying healthy. What we're going to do today is show you how to do some simple barbecue at home. I'm James and this is Jameson. He'll be my assistant for the day. What we're going to do is show you two different types of meats, tri-tip and St. Louis pork ribs. We'll also show you how to do it on a couple different types of smokers. One, a nice traditional Texas style, and a Weber. I think most people will have a Weber at home that they can use instead of using a bulky unit like that. So we'll show you how to trim it up, how to season it, how to start a fire, what kinds of woods, and enjoy. So one of the first things you have to do before you start barbecuing is start a fire. There are many ways to start a fire. However, what I've found the best way is to use some of these old used egg cartons. They have nice divots in it, charcoal falls right in between, has good airflow when you start the fire, and it burns a little bit slower than just paper. It helps the charcoal catch. And get yourself, invest 20 bucks in a charcoal chimney. Save the struggle of trying to build a campfire on your own. Really cheap and effective. So when it comes to charcoal to start your fire with, you could start it with wood if you wanted to. It's better to use charcoal. Now, what I do is I get this natural hardwood briquette. It doesn't have any accelerants in it. A lot of cheap charcoal will have some sort of gasoline incendiary to help the briquettes catch. I find when I started barbecuing, there was this lingering taste on the meat, and I realized it was the charcoal that I was using. And a lot of people will even go and get some lighter fluid. And this is probably the first thing to throw away. It is just garbage. Don't ever use lighter fluid. It's gonna make your barbecue taste like, just don't do it, don't do it. So, depending on what you're doing, whether we're doing barbecue, but if you're grilling meat, you probably wanna use a little bit more charcoal. So, just fill her up. Once again, you can use a lighter, but I have a fun little torch. It's made for like soldering and welding copper pipes and things like that, but we have them in the kitchen. If you have one in the garage, I highly recommend it. Get the other side a little bit. And looks like we're going. And now we wait. We're going, getting hot. Just wanted to talk about two different types of grilling methods. One, I think everybody's more or less had one of these in their life. Just a standard Weber. This one's a little bit fancy. I think it's a Master Series or whatnot. I think it's like 50 bucks more than your standard normal kettle Weber. It's got a thicker grill. It's got a hole. You can open up flaps. You can add more charcoal on the side here if you want to. Oh, missed one. It's got an ash bucket. You can open and close the vents. This guy's got a little temp gauge on here, which is pretty nice to have, especially when you're smoking. If you're just grilling something really hot, you're not really going to look at the temperature. And I really like this. I grew up on one of these. I learned actually how to smoke and barbecue on one of these other than just grill. And then eventually I moved up to a bigger smoker, an offset smoker, sort of a Oklahoma, Texas style. It's a lot heavier. It burns a lot more wood. But It's an indirect heat, and I think it works just amazing for smoking meats. It is a little bit more expensive. I think, you know, one of these is like 150 bucks, and I think Home Depot or Lowe's has one of those for about 300. If you want to ask me later where I got them, I'll let you know. And also remember, you got to put one of those, you got to build these things yourself. But depending on what you're cooking and how you like to cook, either one of these is perfectly fine. So if you're using your offset smoker, take your charcoal that we got nice and hot. You can see it's really roaring there. Pour that in. Doesn't seem like it's a whole lot, but with a smoker like this, we're mostly getting all of our flavor on the meat with wood. So right here, I've got little hickory chips. I like to use the chunks actually instead of chips. The chips I feel burn really, really quickly, and you'll be sitting here having to pay attention to it a lot more than you would if you just use big chunks like this. I actually even go a step bigger and use half logs and things like that. So just throw some in here. Use what you got. I mean, obviously don't rip out any 2x4s from your garage and use that. That's not going to taste very good. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is trim up a piece of tri-tip. Now, it's one big sort of square. You have your ball tip and then you have your tri-tip, and it's on an angle. So the reason they call it tri-tip is 1, 2, 3 corners. Well, so most of the cuts of meat that you're going to find at the store are either going to be select or choice. A lot of the higher grades go to fancy restaurants and cruise ships and things of that nature. And for barbecue purposes, you don't really need that high grade. It has a lot of fat marbling. That's the good part about it. But what we're trying to do is render that fat out, so it's kind of counterproductive. What we have to do now is take a good look at what we got. This one's actually not bad in terms of being cleaned up. It looks like the butcher went a little heavy on the trimming. Sometimes you'll get a package of tri-tip and it'll look nice and clean, but then when you pull it out of that plastic and that styrofoam tray and you flip it open, it's just a huge cap, fat cap. So what you want to do is just, get a nice sharp knife, and it's much easier to trim beef and or pork when it's really cold. So this stuff just came out of the fridge. It solidifies that fat and that protein so that your knife slides through it more easily. So you don't want to take too much off. Leave a little bit on there. If you don't like fat at all, it's okay. I'm not going to judge, but fat is flavor. We are rendering it out, but while it does turn into liquid, it does leave flavor when you're cooking it. Now, when you're using a smoker, especially the offset long, the big guy here, you want to trim this up so it's more aerodynamic, streamlined, because you've got fire on one side producing smoke and flowing out the other. So you're usually going to have the thickest, biggest part towards the flame, and then the thinner, smaller part, the cooler side of the smoker, right? So we want to trim it up. If you lose a little bit of meat, that's okay, but what we're really going for is a nice aerodynamic look. My theory behind this is you're trying to guess what the final product is going to look like. Now, if you spend a little bit of time making it look good in the beginning, you're going to have less of this gristle and stuff to throw away after it's already cooked. Now, since we have it all trimmed up, a little bit more here. See, I told you I'm getting carried away. What we're going to do now is show you my simple spice rub for this, and it's kind of a cross between Texas and California style. 3 ingredients, really simple. We got sea salt and or kosher salt, 16 mesh ground, freshly ground black pepper. If you don't know what 16 mesh is, it's basically the coarseness of, if you look at your window screen right now for your bug window screen, those little the holes, that's about the size of the peppercorn that you want to season meat with. It's coarse enough that it imparts a lot of nice flavor without being too spicy, and it also allows it to stick to the meat quite well. So with these three ingredients, get yourself a nice little shaker. I've used this one a few times. It's getting a little beat up, but it's got perforations at the top, and it's really easy to just visually see your ratio and shake it up. So let's do that right now. We'll start with, I have kosher salt. We use a lot of kosher salt in the kitchen. It's cheap and it tastes good. Just whatever you do, don't use iodized salt. It's not the best for cooking. But we don't need a whole lot because we're just cooking a couple pieces of meat. But I mean, usually when I'm making this for the kitchen, I'm probably doing a full bottle, if not a couple. So I like to do about 50-50. Right, and then the paprika, you can use sweet smoked paprika, you can use Hungarian paprika. I think the sweet smoke is just a little bit less spicy. I think the Hungarian paprika is really nice, but it has a little bit more bite to it. But either one is totally fine, your preference, free country. So we will do half of the volume of pepper to paprika. So it was 50-50, and then we'll take about that much. Now, I like to use a little bit of paprika because it gives a bit more of a mahogany color after you're done with the, or while you're smoking. This especially is true with pork. So like a pork butt or pork ribs, adding a little paprika to your salt and pepper mix will give you a beautiful, nice finished product color. So, with that said, let's take this. We've got our ratio and just shake it up. Pretty easy. Some fun for the little kids to do. Just don't let them lose the top. So, and that's about it. Nicely shaken up. Super easy. 3 ingredients. I'm sure all of you have this in your kitchen right now. Now, seasoning is very important, and having a nice typewriter shape and having it all very even is by far the most important thing, because you go out there and you YouTube video on how people do their spice rubs and you just see them pour it on in one spot and just rub it all around. Not a big fan of that, because you want every single slice to taste the same as the last slice, or the slice coming up. So what I do is just get your shaker, sort of make sure you balance your wrist a little bit. It takes a little practice. You could do a first run and something else, but just do a little typewriter, and all you're doing is just looking for being even, right? Now, a lot of people will rub a little mustard on there. Let's see if we can do that. If I have any mustard, let me check here. Do I have any mustard? You know what? We'll use something else. Here we go. We're gonna wing it here. Home cooking, right? We'll use a little bit of the barbecue sauce we're gonna show you a little bit later on in the video. But use a little bit of this. You can use mustard, you can use hot sauce. Keep one hand clean and one hand dirty, and you can just rub that, get it everywhere. And then what happens is, now when you season this salt, pepper, paprika mix, getting a little windy over here.
will help stick. And you've added a little bit of extra flavor. If it's a super long cook, you're probably not going to taste it in the final product. Make sure you get the sides here. Use what you left on the cutting board. Don't waste it. I mean, it's cheap, but it's already there and you already made the place dirty. So, and that's it.
Today we're going to make a basic Memphis-style barbecue sauce with some butter, onion, paprika, ground mustard, ketchup, soy sauce, brown sugar, apple cider vinegar, and salt and pepper. You're going to start off by melting the 3 tablespoons of butter. Once you have the butter nice and melted, start throwing your diced onion, about half an onion diced. Start sweating that down with the butter. There's many variations of barbecue sauce that you could actually do, but we're going to do a Memphis style. All right, as your onions are sweating down, you can go ahead and start seasoning with the salt and pepper. Add a little smoked paprika. Ground mustard. Once you have everything incorporated, we'll go ahead and add a little bit of the soy sauce. Deglaze the pan a little bit. Add a little apple cider vinegar. Add our 2 cups of ketchup. And then we'll add about a cup of brown sugar to it. And you want to lower it so the sugar doesn't burn. And you let that simmer for 15-20 minutes. And you'll take it to your blender and you'll puree it. You cool it down and use it on all your meats, anything you're grilling. Boom.
So the second thing we're barbecuing today is a St. Louis style pork rib. And St. Louis style is basically a cross section of your larger rib. There's usually 3 types that you can buy at the store. It's your baby backs, which is kind of a smaller bone and it's a little bit more curved. Then you have your St. Louis. I think most people will find this at the store, and I like it because it has a very nice fat to meat ratio and it barbecues very well. Keeps it juicy. Fat is flavor. So get your sharp knife again. Check it all around. Once again, if you're using this on a big smoker, you want to sort of streamline it, make it aerodynamic for the flow of smoke. Don't worry about taking too much off, just, sort of some of that nasty stuff that may not render all the way. And if you got these little pieces that are hanging from, the initial butcher from the store, don't feel like you need to save this. Just cut it off. It will burn. You're not going to like it anyway. You're probably going to throw it away. So just cut that. Make it a little more streamlined. I know it seems like a shame, but just make it nice and even. It'll cook more even. Now, when you're butchering and playing around with a rack of ribs like this, check on the sides here for sharp bones, because later on these are going to protrude and we're going to wrap them with aluminum foil, and something sharp like that is going to poke through. So just pay attention to it. If you can, if it comes off easily, take it off. If not, just remember it's there. Little pieces like that, unnecessary. Right here, when they cut it, there's this a perfect example right here. A little shard, and that, when you cook, is going to poke right through your aluminum foil. Let's see if we can cut that off too. It helps to have a sharp knife, but most of this is cartilage. So we've got basically a nice rack right here. Trim up a little bit. If you don't want to trim all the fat off, what I recommend is just putting a little extra rub of spice so it penetrates through the fat when it cooks. Now, last but not least, there are two thoughts on this sinew that runs on the back side. This is the inside of the rib where basically all the internals of the animal are. So this is your inside and this is your outside. So some people will peel this sinew off and take a towel and you can rip it all off. But in restaurants and things like that, we're cooking so many of them that it's almost a waste of time. So what I've done, and I've seen other people do it too, I'll take my knife and I'll just sipe right through it. You're not really cutting into any meat, but you're allowing the flavor to penetrate through and the fats to escape and whatnot. And I think that for the duration we're going to cook this for about 3 hours or so, it's not really going to cause a problem for flavor. A lot of your flavor is going to be on this side anyway. And this is your presentation side, so make sure this looks beautiful. And then when you cut it, no one's really going to see that side anyway. So, like we did on the tri-tip, I'm going to use the same spice rub. Like I said, adding the paprika to the spice rub is very important with the pork product. It gives it a nice mahogany color, and make sure you do everything very evenly. And if your ribs are nice and juicy, the salt and pepper will stick. No problem. Get it on the sides there. But once again, if they're a little bit dried out, not a problem. You can take the barbecue sauce that Jameson just made. I like to put it in a squeeze bottle and add a little more apple cider vinegar to it, maybe about 50-50. Makes it, a little more fluid, and it'll help attach some of this seasoning. And boy, that looks good already. Like I said, keep one hand dirty, one hand clean. That way you can manipulate stuff without making all your bottles dirty and nasty. Gloves are very, very nice to have if you can find them these days, especially when you're cooking outside because you don't have a faucet close by with soap and water. But I think that's good. We'll do a little typewriter action again. There we go. Yeah, see, that's sticking a little bit better. So you can do the sauce on all the sides. I think on the tri-tip and this guy, I only did sauce to stick on one side for demonstration, but you can put it on both sides. And that's it. If this part is really thin, some people like to fold it over a little bit. It keeps it more even, but every piggy's a little bit different. So just work with what you got. Just make sure everything's consistent. And that's it. So what I'm going to show you on the classic Weber is how you would smoke meats using one of these. I know for the most part they're made for grilling, but you can change it up a little bit so that you can smoke meats too. You just have to watch it a little bit closer. So we're going to grab what we just did, the ribs here. Now remember, for demo here, let's say the charcoal and your wood is on one side, and then you have a nice little buffer zone log that I've put here that kind of smolders and keeps it a cooler zone. So what I would do is take these ribs and put them right on top of where that colder zone is. That way you have as much indirect heat as you can with a small cooker. And after that's going, you can keep an eye on it. I like these because it has the flap, so you can throw a little extra wood chunks in there and call it a day. Now, you'll close that up, and you can see you've got your baffles here. What I would do is start it open and just get a feel for your temperature and whatnot. With ribs, I want to keep it about 270 degrees. And keep it about that temperature as accurate as possible. If it fluctuates, you know, plus or minus 15 degrees one way or another, it's not going to be the end of the world. But what you don't want is all of a sudden it dropping to 150. You put some stuff on and then all of a sudden it's 350. It's going to fluctuate too much. The meat's going to shrivel and it's just not going to be, you know, as good of a product in the end. Now this will be the exact same thing if you were doing the tri-tip. I was just showing you with the ribs here. And of course, like I said, this is for demo, but we really want to cook these things. We're gonna eat them. So let's get this tri-tip. See, your tri-tip will go right there too. And then eventually, after a couple hours of smoke and you feel good about it at 270, I'll show you how to wrap it up and then put it back on. That's about it. But this guy's ready to go. We're smoking. We've got some nice blue smoke here. Maybe kind of hard to see in the shade, but open that up. Oh, there's a smoke. So like I said, when you put this on your smoker, this part is, for me, is kind of useless. It's a little bit, this is where your heat's coming from, and sometimes it's a little bit too hot. So I like to use the back 2/3 of my smoker and keep the thick end towards the heat, because this is going to cook a lot faster than this, so you want to average everything out. So that's how we do that. We'll take our ribs and we'll do the same thing. This is a little bit of the thicker part, and this is that thinner flap, which will burn faster. So now that we kind of cut it a little bit more aerodynamic, that flow will come out the chimney a lot better. Set it and forget it. It's been about a couple hours now, so we'll check these ribs. And they're looking pretty good. We got a nice mahogany color. This tri-tip's looking a little dry, but that's because every once in a while I spray a little apple cider vinegar and water solution on it if it's starting to look a little dry, and brings it back to life. But I think we're good. I think it's time to wrap. I'll show you how to do that right now. So after about a couple hours and your ribs and or tri-tip look good, you don't really want any more smoke on it, we're gonna wrap it with aluminum foil. And I'll show you how to do that right now. Sounds pretty easy, but there are a couple little tricks that I can show you. So get your aluminum foil. What I like to do is do about double the length as the ribs itself. I'm going to put this right here so the wind doesn't blow it away. Now, we'll get your ribs. It's about double the length. And so what I like to do is get some of that barbecue sauce we made and just pour a little bit on the foil. So just rub that around there. You can put a little bit more here too. Depends how dry your ribs are when they come out of the smoker, but you can rub that in a little bit. Now remember I said check for the sharp bones. If there's anything sharp sticking out, that'll probably punch through your aluminum foil, and then you put it back on the grill and all your nice juices are just going to be at the bottom of the smoker, and nobody wants that. So once that's nice and glazed, take your gloves off, and what we're gonna do is wrap. Make sure it's tight. You don't want it very loose, or else it's just gonna steam in there. Wrap it up. Make sure nothing's ripping. Fold it over. Fold it over again, and it's ready to go back on the grill for about an hour. All right. right, so they were on wrapped for an extra hour, and now it's time to let them rest. We've already done that for about half an hour. The longer you can wait, the better. Trust me, it'll come out you'll have a much better product. And then when you cut into it, the juices won't flow everywhere. So just, at least give it half an hour to rest, cool down, and then you can handle it with your hands. So let's go with the tri-tip first. So now this was about 270 degrees for about 3 hours. 2 hours smoked, 1 hour wrapped. Oh, that's looking good. All right, we got, some of that fat is rendered. You've got juices. Take that, throw that away. Okay, now it's very important to know how to cut a piece of tri-tip. The grain, you want to cut against the grain. It's kind of like ripping a paper or trying to pull it apart. One way doesn't work, the other way is very easy. And you'll get a better mouthfeel and easier to chew. So you can see, it's kind of hard to see because it's a little juicy, but the grain runs this direction and then it starts running that direction. So you want to cut against the grain. Now what I do is usually cut the tri-tip into 2 pieces. You'll go in this crescent moon right here and slice, and this will be your first moment of truth. And that looks pretty good. Nice smoke ring around there, still soft, kind of like a medium push. And now you have the grain running this way, so what you're going to want to do is turn the tri-tip and slice like that. Let's see if you can see that going like that. So if you do it right, tri-tip is a very simple, faster, half the time cook as brisket.
Here we go.
Yeah. Smoke them if you got them. These still are warm. All right, so last but not least, we've got our ribs. Oh, I can already see that these are nice and juicy. Okay, I'm gonna go this way, try not to splash you guys. Flip it out. Try to keep the juices on the cutting board there. Oh, money. So that looks pretty good. You can see how the bones are kind of protruding. Could have smoked them a little bit longer, but it is what it is. You can always throw them back on if you want to. So with this, pretty easy. Just follow the bones. Some of these are straight and then they kind of start curving, so you're just gonna have to play with it. Sometimes an easy way to do it is from the other end or up through top, but let's just try it this way. There we go. That one's a little crooked. Oops. There we go. These are pretty hot. Okay. So these are looking very nice. Nice smoke color, nice and juicy. And that's about it. Enjoy. It's not a specific type of cut, but this is choice cut. So what that means is there's select, choice, and what's the other one, Jameson? The higher grade there. Gosh, I might have to cut this one.
I keep wanting to say choice.
Select, choice,
Prime.
Yeah. Prime.
You knew that.
I did know that. I can't believe people are going to be
prime rib, baby.
People are laughing at me already. Gosh, I'll never live in Texas. So